Alright, which one of you is the boss this week?
Hey fish friends, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well. My name is Zenzo and you are watching Tazawa Tanks. If you're new to my channel, hit that sub button, hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I upload a new video. So recently a viewer asked me about adding African cichlids to an aquarium and how to do it. The question was, could he add 1 or 2 African cichlids to his tank and what he would need to do to ensure that those cichlids would survive. So for those of you that may not be familiar with African cichlids, or if you're just getting into the hobby, they can be pretty aggressive. I would say that most African cichlids are moderately aggressive to severely aggressive, just depending on the species that you have and that particular individual. So if you are new to the hobby, I would say to be prepared for aggression. So the question was how to add African cichlids to an established tank. And here I have my African cichlid tank. This is my Malawi tank. And in here I have about 20 or so fish. It kind of varies depending on what I'm doing downstairs in the fish room with breeding. So I will sometimes move fish in and out of this aquarium. When I do so, I can't just take that fish from the fish room and introduce that male right back into this tank because it will cause chaos. So what happens in an African cichlid aquarium is you have what is called a hierarchy. So in that hierarchy, you will have what is called a tank boss. You'll hear this quite often when talking to African cichlid keepers, and that essentially means there is one fish in the tank that is the dominant fish. And that fish, which is usually a male, most likely in an African cichlid case, that fish will basically determine kind of the flow of the tank as far as aggression and the hierarchy and the pecking order, so to speak, on how the other fish behave and how they interact with one another. So the tank boss, if it's a good tank boss, will pretty much set the tone, and the pecking order kind of goes down from him. So when you remove a male fish from an African cichlid tank, the hierarchy changes, because if you have, let's say, 20 males in an aquarium, you pull one out, and maybe that male was number 2 in the hierarchy list or number 1, all of a sudden everything's messed up as far as the hierarchy is concerned, and the fish will kind of start battling each other for a day or so to determine who that next tank boss will be, and then everything kind of goes back into harmony, so to speak. Now, I wouldn't say that African cichlid tanks are harmonious, but they kind of get back to kind of a level that's tolerable as far as aggression is concerned. So when you do have an African cichlid and you need to introduce that cichlid, in my case, back into that aquarium, I can't just take him and put him back in because it will be chaos. It could be dangerous for him if there is a new hierarchy established, or dangerous to some of the other fish. So generally speaking, when you add African cichlids to an aquarium, it's best to not do it solo. Meaning it's not good to add just one fish to a tank that's already established with a lot of fish. Now I do it, and there's a couple of ways that I do it, and I'll share that with you. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to change the environment. The first thing I do when I know that I'm adding fish into the tank is I will do a large water change. So I do large water changes anyway, so I'll do a large water change to ensure that it kind of bunches all the fish together and they're not quite sure exactly what's going on, so it kind of disrupts their normal habitat. The other thing that I'll do is I will move some of the substrate around, I'll move some of the rocks around to make it seem like it is a new tank. Now for me, that's usually enough to where if I do a large water change, large meaning like 70% or so, a large water change, and if I move the decor around before I put the tank back together, what I'll do is I'll take that fish that's downstairs in the fish room, that male, and I'll put him in the tank when the tank is low, and then as I'm refilling, they're kind of figuring out what's going on, and they're reestablishing a hierarchy, but it's not like one fish has been introduced to an established tank and he is getting his butt kicked. Now, the reason why it's not generally a good idea to add one fish as a solo occupant to a new aquarium or to an established aquarium is because it's very likely that that fish is going to get bullied because he hasn't established himself in the hierarchy and doesn't have a spot in the pecking order. So usually it's a good idea to add 3 or 4 or 5 at a time, because that helps to spread the aggression around. It doesn't have one fish that is targeted, that the other fish know is a new fish in the tank, and they're focused on 4 or 5 other fish that have been added to the tank, so that one fish has kind of a chance to fend for himself and kind of fight for his own spot in the pecking order. Now, the best way to add African cichlids would be to do what I shared with you as far as doing a water change and changing the decor around, but to take it a step further and actually remove the fish from the aquarium. And I've done this before when there was a couple times when I knew that I was adding the original tank boss back into the tank, and I knew that there was going to be some kind of challenge in doing so. So I actually removed the fish from the tank, put them in a big tub, and did my water change, then reintroduced them back in. And what happens is, while they're sitting in that tub, and I just threw an air stone in there and let that go for like an hour or so, they're kind of like all of a sudden, hey, what's going on? I'm in this tub. They're not in their normal tank. And then you put the fish back in the aquarium, and all of a sudden it's almost like it's a new environment for them in a new aquarium. So it kind of, again, there will be some fighting, there will be a little bit of chaos, but it won't be that one fish that's being picked on. So to sum it up, I would say that it's not a good idea to add one fish at a time to an African cichlid tank. If you are going to do that, just know that there is a risk involved, and possibly having some type of bullying situation. But if you do so, make sure that you do change the environment, do a water change, move the decor around. If you can, take the fish out of the tank, and then you can see they're kind of fighting right now. Take the fish out of the tank and then reintroduce them back in. And again, other things that might help in distracting would be turning off the lights, covering the tank in a blanket, doing a feeding. Those kind of things will help to distract the fish from focusing on one new fish and one new occupant in the tank. Ideally, you're going to add 3 or 4 or 5 or more fish at one time, and that way, again, the aggression will be spread out. There won't be one fish that's picked on, and in doing so, still do the same thing where you are changing the environment, blacking out the tank, doing feedings, etc., removing the fish. That just is going to give you a better chance at avoiding some of the aggression that is likely going to happen. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.